There we go. Oh no, do you
I
guys
see it
see? Good
going live.
morning, everyone. All right, cool. We are live here, so welcome everyone. It's Friday. Got a lot of information to go over. Jackson Hole was covered this morning. Jerome Powell speaking, but we got Chris Invest LYH here, Donato Callahan, and we got Tyler. So we got some new people on today. So Tyler, why don't you introduce yourself real quick, man?
Hey everybody, my name is Tyler Thrush. I am a retired fireman out of Los Angeles County. I live in Orange County. I invest as an investor in Boise, Idaho since 2017. And then I have owned a mortgage company and been involved in the mortgage space since
Introduce
2002.
yourself real quick. I like it. Cool.
Had
Oh, Chris
enough,
had to
Mark?
pop off. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. So Donato, it's your first time meeting Tyler, and I believe Chris too, right? So why don't you tell
I
them about
believe
yourself a
so.
little bit, man?
Yeah, so I'm a real estate investor I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and I own in St. Louis and Texas. I have residential, and then I have 372 commercial units, multifamily projects. And I am right now the head of acquisitions for a multifamily investment group after retiring from my day job as a geospatial analyst for the Department of Defense. And in my spare time, all the spare time that I do have, I have been building Bright Investor as its CEO, which is the fastest way to find profitable deals nationwide with automatically analyzed deals and market research like appreciation and crime stats to find the best spots for you to invest in.
Awesome, man. Yeah, and Chris is our economic specialist here today. So we got a lot of stuff to cover. The Fed meeting or Jackson Hole today. So who wants to dig into that first about maybe interest rates or what they're possibly going to see in the next few weeks or months?
We have a lender on the line, right?
All right, that's where I was going to hopefully go
Yeah,
with.
that's fine with me. No, I was just saying that before we went live that it's interesting. A lot within the last 3 days, it feels like the faucet's been turned back on as far as application volume, people getting ready to buy. I've been pricing out mainly VA deals this week, and they continue to drop. We're already getting deals in the 5% range. I fully anticipate, next year in the fours. I do, and I mean I'm not an economic major by any means, but I do think that a lot of the pricing for the first cut is already priced in. But I definitely think that we're headed for lower rates. I mean, anything from where we're at is going to help us on the investing side. I think DSCRs are going to get much more favorable rates. The lower those rates go, I mean, our qualification standards are going to get much, much easier. And I think a lot of things that have not been deals in the last year or two are definitely going to look a lot better on paper. So that's kind of my opinion. I'm looking forward to refining some of my DSCRs into lower rates, increasing cash flow. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right now. And I do love having the mortgage business still because it gives me a very good idea on the retail side what I'm looking at and the activity. So when I'm making decisions on the investing side, I can confidently say, hey, this is still a really good time to invest. People are still interested in buying homes. And it took that very small downward tick in the last week to boom. So people are waiting. They're just waiting for the rates to get to a point where they can afford to buy a residence. That's my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a colleague of mine, he bought a triplex less than 10 months ago at 7.125 interest rate. And just last week on a VA loan, lender called saying with a $950 buy down or fee on the retail side, we can get you down to 575 and 10 months later. And so that property is going from just barely breaking even at 7125 to cash flowing in $450 a month on that refinance. Now, I will do want to point out here, I think the market is priced in a quarter point cut. Now, a lot of us did see the 812,000 job revision, largest since 2009, just last week, which I think just seeing that in the headline of biggest job cut revision in almost a decade uh, really is going to shock some people. And I think it has people wondering, are we going to go even further than a quarter point, maybe to a half point in this very first cut, which with that big of a cut, I think it's possible. And at that point, I think we're going to see a lot of floodgates open of people saying, oh my gosh, I'm getting into the low fives for my interest rate projections. And I think we're going to unfortunately also see millions of retail buyers and investors come back into the market, and home prices are going to also come back up and continue to escalate faster because the demand has not subsided.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
And I will add to that. I think Mark you may have seen it. Somebody recently published the video on how the $25,000 down payment program could work. And that somebody is right here.
Yeah.
And the reason why I said that is because if we shifted it from the entry level buyer to the step up above that, it would unlock that supply to hit that entry level, which would alleviate those prices there. And it would put that seller to buy in that move up where we see a lot of those listings sit. And what's happening right now is the reason why I believe that, because there is no need to give entry level people an incentive. They want to buy.
Yep.
The rate comes down a little bit, they jump off the sideline. What we need to do is incentivize. Well, I mean, economically, I think that they need to kind of keep out of the market. But if they decide to do a policy, they need to creatively understand that the supply needs to be unleashed for the entry level person, and the builders aren't going to do it. They don't have the time. So we have to take the market as it is today and figure out where we can fluctuate the 100% of the market so that the entry level gets the supply that they need, and those that are sitting who are in lower rates can have that marginal push to move up.
Exactly.
And if that's the case, then that's something that they can do. I don't think it's going to pass. I'll tell you guys that right now. But when you creatively think about that kind of solution because the demand is there for entry level, we need to shift that demand for the move up buyer, because then it unleashes that supply to the low end, and it allows the move up buyer. It's kind of like the market that it was in 2020, 2019 into 2020. A normal market. You buy, you move up, and then eventually you downsize. We've cut that off because we've raised rates so quickly. So it's going to be an interesting next few weeks. That's for sure.
And
Yeah.
if you want to see that video, I've posted Chris's YouTube channel in the comments, so go check it out. There's also Tyler's First Responder Financial Freedom YouTube channel in there, also on Instagram. And Donato, did I post yours yet? I'm trying to get all of your guys' stuff in there right now, but we got Hyder here stopping by, Chester's here. So yeah, I got some smart people on the live today, so I'm just gonna be hanging out in the comments and stuff, and you guys can run with it a little bit. What else you guys think is gonna be happening in the next few months? Like Hyder says, cuts are priced in. Yeah, he doesn't think cuts are coming till needed.
I can see that, and I would ask do you see compressions coming down in the rates for the banks, or is it just the standard compression and we're just building off of the Fed rates?
I think there will be margin compression. I think right now that they have not been forced to do that yet, but I definitely think they're going to. And I do agree with Donato that I think right now a quarter cut is priced in. I think if you get a half point, it's going to have a big effect. And everybody has to remember too, when the Fed cuts rates, that's not directly affecting interest, mortgage rates. It's indirectly affecting that. So we do have to remember that, but it looks at sentiment, right? It's an emotional thing to where people see this, they see where the trend is. The cost for banks to borrow money from each other is now cheaper, which is going to free up capital and allow them to lend at more attractive rates. And byproduct of that, I think, is we're going to have compression in those margins. Right now, lenders are making a ton versus what they're used to making, and I think that will change. And I agree with Chris, what he just talked about. Everybody has termed the lock-in effect, right? We have so many homeowners in entry-level homes that have rates in the twos where they're no longer enticed to move up. Maybe they bought a 2.1 or a 3-1 that's real small and they're going to have a family and they want a 3-2, bigger house, bigger lot. With that 2% interest rate versus a 7% if they were going to move up, nobody's going to jump and be like, oh, yeah, I want the bigger house, but and I'll take the 7% rate. Absolutely not. But if you're maybe think, okay, I do want to move out, I've had great equity growth, and now my starting rate is 4.5%, that's a different conversation. And I think that's going to be a much more effective tool than, like you said, offering $25,000. That's more of like a free market play to where things play out as they should and things will get going along. Good example, my most recent flip in Boise, entry-level home. We put it on the market 2 weeks ago and we had a full price offer within 3 days. Last year, or definitely 2 years ago, when Boise started to cool off with the increase in rates, that would have never happened. So that was a good indicator for me. The volume right now, I have a lot of people I've been talking to for over a year, they're increasing. So I love what both of you guys said, and I think you guys both hit it, the nail on the head on both your comments.
Well, I'd say that I think what sometimes policymakers don't recall is that the way that people have really focused their mindsets around what affordability is has changed. I would argue that 99% of people, when they're looking at affording a home, do not look at the actual cost of the home. They're only looking at the cost monthly. So to them, it doesn't matter if the home prices went from $700,000 to $500,000 if their monthly payment went from $2,000 to $3,500. That's what people are looking at, whether they can afford. And so when you're finding all these people who are priced in, and you have policymakers saying, well, home prices have stopped their, rocketing, appreciation, or we're seeing some declines in major metros. That's not really the metric that everyday people are looking at. They're saying, can I afford this in a softening job market where if I was a tech professional, if I was one of a variety of industries that was relying on a higher income, all it matters at the end of the month, I'm in the black and I'm not losing, and I'm able to afford this on a monthly basis. So, and I think part of that's, our subscription-based, economy, a bit more of a gig economy, how we look at the exchange of goods and services as more as payments. And so thinking about it in that way, I think would radically change how our policymakers impact what they're going to actually do to increase affordability. Because at the end of the day, it just becomes down what you can afford every single month.
Awesome. We got No Filter for This stopping by from the X side. So thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe to all the channels. But it says, what do y'all think of these new NAR rules for buyers' seller fees? A big nothing burger or a significant change in home purchase dynamics?
Ooh, it's almost like the coaching industry for real estate investors since 2020. I think this is it's a thinning event. It's a bottleneck event. I've been speaking with realtors who in some cases are even seeing higher compensation because they're able to more freely negotiate their commissions up higher. Say, I'm worth more. I can charge more than what this socially ingrained 3% on either side was currently the default. But a lot of folks who, I think like any type of market where you have a lot of people, hundreds of thousands in fact, jumping in at a time when historically it's been one of the easiest times to sell a certain product and provide a certain service, all of a sudden it gets more difficult. Those who continue to provide outsized value and more importantly can communicate that value, I think are going to be fine. But folks who are falling into the category of, I am surely someone who doesn't really know a lot about construction or don't know about what makes a good quality home, or for our investor-friendly agents, like if you don't know how an investor thinks or what they're looking for, and you can't serve them beyond just the product of here's the actual house, I think they're going to have a harder time. But I don't think it's going to be a sweeping overnight shift of all of a sudden buyer agents aren't being compensated and people are leaving the market all of a sudden because no one really knows what the new norm is going to be, especially with so many agents that have been doing this for 20, 30 years that are set in their ways. And you have folks who are already looking for how they can circumvent really the actual ruling itself to say, well, I'll just put the percentage in my buyer agent commission in the description or something somewhere, or, find a way to make that work. So I don't think it's something that's going to be a avalanche, but it is something that I think is going to be almost like a rising tide where we're going to see exactly who's going to start sinking and who's going to start floating.
Yeah,
I'll jump in.
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead, man. No, go Chris.
I was just going to jump in on both on that point and the last point that you made, and because you mentioned the policymakers, and I think people when I talk to my students about econ principles, they say, "Well, why doesn't the government do this?" And I say, "Well, we assume that they understand this." And sometimes the policymakers do not understand just the basic fundamentals of economics. I mean, I remember I did a talk recently with our local group, and I showed them just some basic economic principles. And I said, you guys have to understand, there's a lot of assumptions here. And at that point, everybody was saying, well, listings are growing, prices are going to come down. And I said, a listing is not a commodity. And one of the assumptions of supply and demand is that every product is homogeneous. And then on the flip side, coming back to the market, we forget to understand that the seller and the buyer have to agree. And the market determines what that price for that service is. So I think the agents that are doing it well now and being able to raise their commission, they're going to be unleashed because they're able to say, this is the value that I bring. Some agents out there, I mean, we've all seen now we're a lot in the investor space, so we see it a lot more, but if you have a buyer versus an investor, it's a little different. But we've all seen the homes out there with 2 photos. There's a dog in one, it's a complete mess, and then the front photo, that's the Google photo. Are those agents going to be able to command the 3%? Or is the guy down the road, even though it might be a property that needs a lot of work, has gone in and maybe not taking professional photos, but he's cleaning things up and making sure that people can see what's going on? That will determine that person's price in that market.
I agree. I think the top agents right now are probably licking their chops because they know that they have the skill set needed in order to survive, and they're not going to let something like this stop them. They're solution oriented. They're going to figure out how it's going to work, and then they're going to take market share. A lot of this happened in like 2007 through 10 when we went through Dodd-Frank. Prior to that, being licensed for a mortgage was like the Wild West. And I'll never forget when we were getting all of our NMLS numbers, you had a room of like, I want to say like 50 people, for example. And then they used North Carolina as an example. They said, okay, if you want to get licensed in North Carolina, you cannot have 1 30-day late. You cannot have this or that. And half the room stood up and got out because what was this huge hole in an easy entry now got, drastically reduced. And then we realized, okay, now we've lost a lot of people to the market and we were able to thrive. And I think the same thing. I think if you look into agents now, the good agents that I like to watch on Instagram and see how they're posting about this, they're extremely confident. They've already figured out what they're going to do, and they're attacking right now because people who are indecisive and are not sure, they're not going to win. And the people who open the door for 3%, they're not going to last. They're going to have to adapt.
And I think stats like from Inman, I was looking for this article that I read several months ago, back in January of this year. It reported that 49% of residential realtors had done 1 or fewer transactions in all of 2023. So quite literally half the industry is doing 0 to 1 in a 12-month period. And that's pretty insane to think about it when you have, I want to say 500,000 agents, or I think NAR represents up to 1.5 million registered realtors, if I'm not mistaken. That's a lot of people doing pretty much nothing, or people who have it just for no reason. And so when you look at how much, the market can really contract as far as the service providers that are out there, I would 100% agree that the folks who are well aligned in their systems and how they can actually serve their clients are going to continue to really build that moat around their individual businesses. And we might, quite frankly, see some of those power agents whittle themselves up to 3.5% and 4%, maybe 4.5%, 5%. And then you're going to find some people saying, well, now I can actually charge you a premium service for a premium price for a premium service, where previously agents said, if I want to get paid more, I go luxury. I either do more volume or I do a higher price product. And so they would elevate to luxury. Now, if you have a rock star that says I play in the $400,000 to $600,000 price range, and say a secondary city, I charge 4.5% because I crush this demographic, and that's who I'm trying to serve.
And I'll give you a quick example on that. When I was out in Arizona, this has got to be a decade ago, I worked for an agent. We were designing his website, and he had the idea back then, well, what if I got a pre-inspection on the home? Could an agent now conceivably say, I'm going to charge you 4.5%, but I've already got an inspection on the home. So when they come back and they say that this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, well, we already have another opinion that says that either it is that's accurate or that it's not. And then, Mark, I have a question for you. Do you think that this change will move people from residential sales to residential management?
Not so much. I think it's like, so kind of like what Hyder commented, said Buffett's quote applies as well. When the tide goes out, we'll see who's swimming naked. So I think there's going to be a lot of agents that are probably going to leave the industry. However, I'm thinking that there might be a lot of flat fee agents coming down the pipeline, like service. So like this might be also leading towards Donato's product, Bright Investor, which you can kind of find and research your own properties. So like for you folks, do you guys have agents bringing you guys a lot of deals, or you guys are kind of finding your own deals, right? So I'm thinking there's going to be like flat fee agents out there that are just going to basically help you along the lines of getting this transaction done. But like a lot of people find their own deals on the MLS or using, like I said, Bright Investor or something. They find their own deals and they just need someone in that area to help them get to the finish line, basically. So I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of maybe flat fee agents out there coming soon.
You make it sound like we're going towards the notary system. You have people get notaries. I mean, truly, it's like, hey, I need a notary. Get licensed over. I know I'm not very familiar with the actual licensing process, but it's not very labor intensive. I get licensed. You give me a call. I have $100 for a 30-minute notary session. I come together, make it happen, and move along. And maybe that's very true. Where someone who needs more work, like I'm gonna do the lender, the network, the contractor introductions. I'm going to do the actual help you with the inspection. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And I can maybe we're going that route where people are paying out of pocket for, the more experienced you come into the transaction, the less I have to do for you, the less you pay me. So almost encouraging the wider populace to get more educated on the housing market and how this industry works, and coming in with a bit more confidence in what they're actually doing and not relying exclusively on the agent.
I'd be interested because I don't know. I've done, direct to consumer marketing for house buying. That's how I've always bought houses. And then obviously I serve people as a lender. I definitely think agents are still going to be necessary on the buy side. With my experience with 95% of my clients, and this is not a bad thing, but they should not be representing themselves in that transaction, would be my opinion.
Yes.
I think you could run into a ton of problems. And the flat fee is interesting to me, Mark, because you made me think of like a same time period, 2007 to 10. I don't even know if they're still around, but there was a company called Assist to Sell, and they were gaining a ton of market share because I think things were moving along at such a rapid pace that everybody began to think, I don't need anybody. I just need to list it. This house is going to sell in 2 seconds anyways. I'm going to save my money. But I still think that the market, this is the beautiful part about this now, I think the market can decide what that buyer's agent is worth. If they want to be worth 4%, go get that skill set that's going to allow you to command that 4%. And I agree, the licensing test, I'm a licensed broker in California because that's how we used to be licensed for them, is not that tough. But I would equate it to our day jobs as firemen. You can pass the EMT test and you can pass a fire academy, but to be honest with you, in no way are you really qualified to step foot on the app for the first day and handle a lot of things that you're faced with. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, but you also got to figure it out too, right? You
don't have a choice. You can't say, hold on, I'm not going to call. I've got to figure this out before I show up.
Or you just forget your gear in the apparatus bay and, you get to the alarm and you're like, oh, shit. I know some guys that happen too. So their first call, they had to buy some Chinese dinner or cake and ice cream. So yeah. Let's see. We got Ike Hobbs here. Ike, thanks for stopping by. Ike is a firefighter in Kansas.
Nice.
So,
One thing that has always interested me about the commission model, I mean, when you have both the buyer agent and the seller's agent both being compensated as a percentage of the property sale price, neither are incentivized to reduce it.
Great point.
And I think that's something that kind of gets left out of the conversation when we're looking at how we compensate folks, because the buyers have, I think, a reasonable expectation that the buyer's agent is advocating for the result. And my personal opinion is I love using buyer's agents because I like to be moving around. I'm always traveling. I'm working on stuff, and I would rather have someone that can go and do and meet with people that I don't have to be there for. So it's honestly just great to have someone else there to do the physical work. So I really advocate for using them. But for a lot of retail buyers, when I'm looking at how do I compensate this person fairly and have the confidence that they're actually working on my behalf, especially if I'm paying them, which in reality, right, the buyer pays for everyone's commission because they're bringing the loan proceeds and they're bringing the actual down payment. So let's just get that clear right now. Buyer's paying everyone's commission. Seller might be putting a little piece of it away, but you're getting that from the buyer. So I can understand retail and buyers' hesitancy on the continuing with the traditional commission model because it does incentivize them to not get them the highest price. And when you have higher splits that certain brokerages are charging, or more monthly desk fees, or you have other higher costs of businesses where they need to get those higher and higher prices to make sure it's worth it for them. I understand where some of the worry comes in, and it does make me wonder, is there a system where commission should be part of the equation for sellers agents and buyers agents should be compensated in an entirely different method beyond just commission? I think it's really
what if they tied it to, like, if the house is $100,000 and you get it for 90, you've decreased the price for the buyer by 10%. Is there a way to formulate where the buyer's agent has a stepped up amount for every percentage that it goes down? I don't know. That's beyond me. That's for Lawrence Yun, the NAR economist. He can figure that out.
Yeah. So that's a super interesting model. Something where, of course, there's all these caveats in the specific situations, but it's interesting to say, hey, this house, we're going to list it at 100,000, and the higher that it goes, the worse or something the buyer agent does, the lower it goes, the better the buyer agent does. And who knows if that's the right system, but something that allows for folks who are choosing to have representation truly coming into this, like you were saying, who many folks should have representation because they don't know what they're doing and they can get screwed very easily. How can they, really in a short and simple way, feel warm and fuzzy at night that their representation is doing right by them?
So before we move on, Tyler, maybe you can kind of talk about what type of lender are. Do you deal with primarily investors, or what type of products do you offer? But also, so RW Equity is asking, would you try and lock in a rate now?
Yeah, so I do residential home loans. I've done a very small amount of commercial lending. I do VA, FHA, conventional, DSCR loans, done hard money, private money. So I've done all of that.
In all states, you're licensed?
Licensed in states, and for DSCR loans, you don't need to be licensed the same way. So I can do those in almost every single state. But in as far as conventional VA, FHA, I can do California, Arizona, Texas, Washington, Oregon, and Florida. I think that was 6. If not, I missed one. And would I try and lock in a rate now? My answer is going to be yes. If the home purchase or if a refinance makes sense now, if rates get better, then it's only going to make that deal better for you. And I don't advocate waiting too long because I feel like people think that they're going to outsmart the market and time it. When in reality, if you currently have a mortgage and let's say it's at 5% and you're waiting for a 2% rate, just purely example, each month you wait for that, you're paying a higher percentage of interest than you would than had you taken a loan at a current rate and saved money monthly. Now, I would not advocate for people buying rates down right now. I would not, if there's a high discount point, meaning let's say you want a 6% rate, but you have to pay 2 percentage points of the loan balance? Absolutely not, because we're almost certain that rates are going to start heading down for the near, if not long term. There's no point in paying $10,000, $12,000. I'll use an example today. $13,000 for a 4.625% rate is what I was going over with a borrower. Absolutely, that does not make sense, because there's no way the difference in payment between what I can give you as a rate with no closing costs versus that is ever going to be recaptured. It was like over, I want to say it was like 52 months it would take for them to recoup that cost. So on the 53rd month, they would realize that savings. Whereas take the loan with little to no closing costs now, take that monthly savings, and then if it gets better, you can refinance again. So
Cool.
long answer, yes, it does make sense to lock in the rate now.
I'll ask a hot button topic here. With where you see things now, knowing the Fed originally started 2024 saying they're going to cut rate 5 times, and that didn't happen. Where do you think retail residential mortgage rates will end up after the cuts have been completed? And with that, let's say, how many cuts do you think there will be before a period of stabilization? How much total cuts will be, and what will the market end up at in a range? And I'll hold you to this perfectly. And if you're not right, then I'm gonna reach out to you.
No, hey, you know what? You got to. We'll just erase the video if I was wrong.
There you go.
You know what? So fair enough. I saw that they had originally priced in 5 rate cuts for this year. I don't personally think that's going to happen, but I could be wrong. I think we'll end up on like a retail side in the low 4s. I think that's where it's going to kind of stop and slow down. And I don't think that's going to happen right away. But my gut's going to tell me low 4s. I just think, and I can't give you a specific reason why. I just think, okay, where is this going to open the market up enough to where those move-up buyers are moving, new buyers are induced to sell, and it's not creating a crazy market like we had during COVID. So I'd say 2 to 3 cuts, and I think just as far as the rates go, I would say we'll be at 4% for rates. So I don't know how many basis points they're going to cut because, like we mentioned earlier, there's a huge margin right now. The rates could be lower than they are actually at present day, and I think that's why they're already priced in, because they already had that wiggle room to move down before that policy announcement was made.
And I'll jump in.
What do you think?
I would say 2 would be, in my opinion, the floor right now, and 3 would be the ceiling. And the reason why is because I think there's other economic news out there that the Fed runs through their model that maybe we don't know. Why did we just all of a sudden have 800,000 people taken off the job roll? I mean, if they had seen that the last 3 months, would we already have had a rate cut? I think those are the questions that I would look at when we look at this. What's going on with people using credit cards? How does the consumer spending look going into September, going into November? Those are the kinds of things that I would see could play a role. One thing I would ask is if we're agreeing that they will only cut a few times, at some point the banks will start competing on that compression. Will that signal, in your guys' opinion, a normalization of the rate market?
I think so.
Yeah.
And to your point, I just wanted to read today. I don't know if you guys all read the release from Jackson Hole, but this was my favorite little quote today. It says, "The time has come for policy to adjust. The direction of travel is clear, and the timing and pace of rate cuts will depend on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks." So that's definitely the most most concise statement, most direct statement he has made in a long time. So, and I do think that because once you get to that ultra competitive rate where they now start having to compress their margin, I think that's going to be a normalization, right? Because then we're going to get different inventory levels. We're going to see a true market. And then I think we're going to find out where we lie with certain areas and how the housing market is. I know we mentioned inventory levels increasing too. I don't know where it was, but have you guys seen where the increase in inventory is actually mainly in 2 states? It's in Florida and Texas. So people are using that to create a national number. In reality, most of that inventory increase is in those 2 states. And I think that's kind of one of those headlines that you can use to create fear. But I think in those states, it'll be interesting to see, will that drop in rate allow for market absorption?
You're getting Chris riled up. That's the doomers. That's the doomers that he fights on X.
I agree with you. People love to think that they're going to recreate 2007 and 10, and I think it is different. I mean, I'm not an economist. I just watch what's going on daily, and I've been in the business. I do not think that if something happens, it's going to look anywhere near what that was.
They basically said he had 2 chins. He was fighting with them, and
the way I was sitting, I did have 2 chins. I might have one now. I just had a Bowflex yesterday, so give me 6 months, guys. I won't have to. Anyway, what I would say about those 2 states as well is a lot of people are moving there. So even though the listings are rising there, the demand shifts as well. Like a lot of people think, oh, we need supply, which is correct, but demand shift as well. So people are moving there. And I think that when they say that the listings are rising and it's a horrible story, well, I just one state does not make the entire nation.
I mean, they could have overbuilt in those 2 states too, right? And that also could be something that they were anticipating a greater demand than actually happened.
And I looked at that in Houston probably about a month ago now. And what I looked at in Houston was they were anticipating still a 6% increase in population. And I think it was 1 month I looked, there was 200 people that moved to Houston. They were normally getting 6,000. If they built for 6,000 and only got 200, of course you're going to have high listings there. That's a great point.
I could see a reasonable situation where the Fed elects to do quarter point cuts, but not consecutively, where they introduce a quarter point cut and then elect to hold the rate steady for 1 to 2 sessions and then continue with quarter point cuts, as opposed to consecutive quarter point cuts all in a row. Because I think, some folks in the chat are making good points here. There is still fears of, if job cuts can be 800,000 off in revisions, are inflationary reports off, or are there other data points that we're not truly tracking in their full realization? So my personal thought on the interest rates, how they'd end up, was that we do approximately 3 cuts over 6 months and end up between 4.25 and 4.75. I thought that was like the sweet spot they'd really love to get folks down into, especially when we're already seeing things in the high 5s. But I think it could potentially be wise on their part to introduce cuts and then, again, play a patient game and see how those effects really start to reverberate, especially as we're still playing catch up on all the data that we're trying to base these decisions off of.
So we got All Nighter Hider here. So go check out his YouTube channel. He just got back from Alaska recently, but he also is a big supporter of Uneducated Economists, also is on YouTube, has a great following. But Hyder says, I'm not anticipating any cuts this year based on communications from Fed presidents to other Fed presidents, not what's communicated to markets via media. So definitely that's another, like, kind of Donato, what you're touching on, right? Certain things like that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, kind of what happens. I think a lot of people are waiting, like they're saying, they're waiting on the sidelines and kind of seeing, so what's going to happen. So I guess, what are you guys doing right now to maybe prepare yourselves, or or put yourselves in a certain position to take advantage of whatever decision they do make?
I'm making offers. I'm offering right now. On the commercial side, last month I was in best and final round for 2 buildings. One was a 200 unit, one was a 220 unit. I've got an offer out right now in a 30 unit near the Mayo Clinic. I've got looking at a bunch of properties in Alabama, Kentucky right now. Looking at making a lot of offers and shooting things out there. And in my pricing, I'm factoring in a little bit lower rates based off what I'm getting today. And in the commercial space right now, I can get 5.3% on a decent product, maybe up to 5.5 on our typical agency debt. So I'm putting offers out there, and the difficult part is that there are a lot of sellers out there on the commercial side who are distressed. One comes to mind of a property that's very close by to one we already own. Broker gave us a phone call saying it was pre-market and they bought it for $42 million 2 years ago, and they're going to sell it for $36 million. And the numbers only made sense at $32 million. So it's like, if I wanted to, I could assume that in my underwriting that I'm going to get a really cheap debt rate at around maybe high fours, but I'm making offers under the assumption that I'm going to get the debt that exists in the market today and not relying on it, but knowing that I can kind of rest easier at night and feel better about any capital I raise or business plans I put in action, knowing that for the first time in a couple of years, the markets are moving in my favor from a debt side, and my ability to refinance and not get caught, with my pants down in a couple of years is, kind of going away.
Is that going to be your next Instagram video with your pants down? It's like, how between making all of these offers, how are you making all these social media posts of Bright Investor and you in the wild and door knocking?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually here in the studio today, so we just recorded a bunch more that'll be coming out over the next couple of weeks. I'm pretty excited on. It's a fun balance, hunting for new properties in the jungles of Central Missouri to, putting out offers. Somehow we make the balance.
When will you be using a stunt double?
We'll see if the budget supports that towards Q4. We'll see. We have some fun stuff coming out, and it's really fun to put together.
Oh, yep. Hyder, thanks for putting Uneducated Economist's channel. So go check him out. I mean, he doesn't need the support. I mean, well, he does, but I mean, he has like over, I think, 200,000 subscribers. But go check him out. He has awesome information. But yeah, Donato, I love all the social media posts, that you're doing recently. So, but what about you, Chris? How are you preparing for possibly rate cuts or interest rate cuts?
Right now, I'm just kind of stabilizing my 6 unit, and I'll be looking for more as soon as I stabilize it. So right now, what I would say is whenever something comes across my desk that I see, I am still using 7 and 8% to see if it makes sense. Because if it makes sense there, then it'll make sense at 6 and 5. So I just kind of take a look at it. One thing I'm doing is I look at properties over 60 days. I'm not looking at anything under because I'm going to get outbid. And for my entry, I look at entry level buildings, buy and hold, and then I rent those out. So at that level, there's just too much competition right now. So I wait to see how long they sit on the market. Because a lot of those, they need a little bit of work. So you can do maybe a lipstick flip, and then you just pop it out there, get it rented, and you're good to go. But right now, as Mark knows, I had some issues with some insurance and a couple other things, but I'm stabilizing that unit while I'm kind of carrying the rest with my other portfolio. So,
Tyler, what about you, man?
I'm in line with that. I'm definitely getting ready to ramp stuff back up. And then when they were talking, I was also thinking, well, a lot of us probably said, man, I wish had rates stayed where they were, I would have done X. And I know for me, it was, I wish I would have held on to more stuff, kept more as rentals. And, you can always say that, right? But I remember last time, the last couple of years, all the people who had been around since like the 70s and 80s, people I look at like as mentors, they were buying every single piece of property they could. And it was interesting as far as why. They didn't mention, oh, I got a great deal on this, got a great deal on that. It was the debt is at 2%. No matter what, I can always do something with that. And there's so many people that have recently said, a lot of the times the most valuable part of these assets that we hold with rates that low is the actual mortgage itself, because we can do so much with it. So for me, definitely going to hold on to a lot more and get more aggressive in my buying again. I've been patient. I will continue to be patient. I backed way off 2 years ago in Boise because the fundamentals and just were not in line with where they were in 2017. I think it's coming back to earth, and I've just been spending this time doing a lot of research where that area is headed and as far as growth, and I think it's a good time to jump back in and buy. But I'm noticing my favorite part of social media is just watching trends, and I'm noticing some of the biggest investors that I know who have bought hundreds of homes year after year. I see them personally starting to get more active, and they're posting things like, oh, I bought 3 today, bought 1 today, bought 1, closed 1, did this. And I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. If these guys have been around the block a few times, I have not seen them post any of this for a very long time. They're already trying to get ahead of everybody else who's going to be buying in a couple months. They're ramping their stuff up. So when everybody else is already or enters the market, they've already been there for a few months. They're rock solid, and they'll profit off of people who are later to the market. So getting aggressive, I guess, would be the answer.
And can I piggyback off that, Mark, real quick? Because you mentioned something in there that I think is critical to the entire rate discussion. You said that if somebody can get 2% rate debt, they can do something with it. These people who were bought in the 70s, they remember the inflation of the 70s. And 2% debt right now means you're earning money on it. Let's tie that back to rates. Our CPI numbers and our PPI numbers have been coming in significantly lower than what it was. The inflation that we have seen over the last few years, it has kind of come back down. Now, a lot of people, I have to explain that the inflation is like a compounding effect. It builds on top of each other. And I know you guys understand that, but some people watching might not. So it's not like the bottle of Coke that we're going to go get is going to go from $3 back to $1 like it was when I was a kid. But it's not going to go up to $3.30 next year. It's going to probably stay at $3. So the Fed understands that the inflation, because they have the two directives, right? Inflation and unemployment. Inflation has been, they've slayed that dragon. Now they're starting, and then it was very interesting that they did that the Bureau of Labor Statistics let out that report about the 800,000 jobs. Because what would the fear have been in this country if not only we could not control inflation, but jobs? Now we have that one beast, the jobs. And I think that that's where we're going to start softening that rate because they don't want jobs to get out of control. Lower rates mean more employment. And I just wanted to add that as you were talking, because you made me think about that as you said that. Those people remember that time, and they remember that. Unfortunately, back then, they raised the rates really fast, and what they did was it kind of eliminated that job growth to hit.
Great point. And you talking about inflation is, I mean, I'm sure, well, somebody listening may not understand inflation as much as you do or some others. But like I said, one of my coworkers, that's the exact same thing. He doesn't, if I was to tell him that, he wouldn't understand what you're talking about as it compounding. So, okay. All right, Chris, if you got to bounce, don't worry. You can bounce whenever.
Yeah, guys, I'm sorry. I got to take off. It was great to meet you guys. Chris, I'll follow you guys out there and we'll connect.
All right, man. Thanks, man. But yeah, so there was actually a tweet that someone said, can someone please explain to me in crayon how inflation keeps going down, but we continue to live in the most expensive timeline of our lifetime? And basically the person said, I used to weigh 200 pounds. In 2020, I gained 5 pounds. In 2021, I gained 11 pounds. In 2022, I gained 9 pounds. In 2023, I gained 6 pounds. This year, I only gained 3 pounds. So my weight gain is down, but now I weigh 234 pounds. And that's how someone was kind of explaining it to someone on X about inflation. So I found, and I wasn't trying to pick on Chris getting the double chin comments and his weight or anything. So he bounced off already, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, inflation is just a measure of how fast things increase. So if inflation is zero, it's not that prices are going up. It's just, well, if inflation is zero, then prices aren't continuing to go up. Or inflation is negative, or these different things. And so I think people need to really understand right now, the prices of 5 years ago are not coming back. If you walk away with anything, I'd say from the audience perspective is that's not happening again. You're not going to get those prices back. We might get cheaper debt again. We might get a period where prices aren't increasing as quickly, but we're not going back. As much as like I would love to go back to 1960, pick up 30,000 plots in Southern California. Great. No matter what happens, I'm never going to be able to buy like I could have, in 1960. So just because inflation's back under control, the better question is what can you do now, knowing about what inflation is going to do in the future? Because I've been thinking about this for a while now, and I think it's a fundamental truth of our country that inflation is a requirement for American retirement. I made it rhyme too. I worked on that. It's a requirement for American retirement, in that it's the expectation that assets value will continue to increase, which is how our economic system is based for most retirement systems, whether that be TSPs, 401ks, or a variety of stock and accounts, or people when they have large home equity, they cash out, they downsize, they dump that into an interest-bearing account or compound interest-bearing account through the stock market, and they live off of that. But inflation is required for us to do what we call retirement, which is not a natural thing for people. It's not like, 10,000 years ago, you're like, oh, great, I'm 65, time to retire. Like, that's not how this worked. It's a relatively modern concept of being able to stop. And so if we value retirement as a society, which I think many people do, it's very much pretty much a lot of people have worked their lives for is retirement, then understand that inflation is an absolute necessity of that conversation means it has to be leveraged, not avoided. And you want to be able to buy in at certain points in time, knowing that inflation is going to be working for you once you move into that ownership class.
Yeah, so like Michael Zuber of One Rental at a Time likes to say, inflation is a feature, it's not a bug, right? And so once you kind of understand that, I think, that's how you're going to play the game, right? But even talking about, maybe we can go veer off a little bit, but talking about interest rate, we don't really know what's going to happen, right? So some people think maybe they're going to cut rates, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But it's also even like politics, right? Who's the president? We don't know who's actually going to win, right? You may have a certain president or choice that you want, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to maneuver whoever's selected, whatever the rates are at. And you're just going to tailor, you're going to be able to adjust to whatever happens, right? So at the end of the day, you kind of got to have a plan for whoever's in office, whatever the rates are at, and you're going to do things slightly different, yeah?
Absolutely. I think, you have to see what's coming out and then you digest it and then you adjust your strategy depending on what you're anticipating and what you're currently seeing now. So, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think if you get too focused on some of that other stuff, you don't have the bandwidth to strategize and then attack. I think a lot of things that are happening right now, I think it's easy to get distracted, but if you have a goal, focus on the goal and you have to pay attention to those things, but remember what your goal is and then take the information in. If rates go down, that makes my deals better. It changes my buy box. If rates go up, I look at it, when rates go up, it's going to eliminate my competition in the real estate investing space as long as I can get cheap debt. It's going to eliminate people who are using institutional lenders, and now that their institutional money is too expensive for them. There's always going to be a way to exploit, I guess, whatever happens. And I think that's what we do as investors, right? We're in a very inefficient market. I think it's rapidly becoming a lot more efficient with the amount of money and data that's being combed through. But I feel like we've always been able to make money in real estate because it's inefficient. So look at what's happening, adjust, and I think there's always going to be a way to make money.
Awesome. Well, I did skip over one question, kind of. I think, where was it? If I can find it real fast. Colby had a question. Hopefully you're still here, man. But shoot. Well, if you guys got some, here we go. Colby asked, would you, as an investor, sign a buyer representation agreement with a real estate agent who you work with to bring you deals?
I mean, depending on the terms of their agreement specifically, are they having you sign a blanket agreement that any deals in a specific time frame that you buy in a certain geographic area, you still pay them a commission on? If that's the case, then no, I probably wouldn't. because they are not necessarily the gatekeepers for all the best opportunities unless they're working exclusively off market, which I would bet they're not. So if that's the situation, no, I wouldn't. But if you're working with a buyer who says, look, let me sign a buyer rep agreement for each individual deal with a realistic timeline of if you buy this deal in the next 12 weeks, then you pay me. Sure. It's depending on what they're trying to get you to agree to, knowing that some people are going to be more aggressive and more, I think, idiotic in the terms you're asking for, and other people won't. So look at the terms first.
Great advice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. I can't even add anything. That's exactly what I
Yeah.
was going to say. As long as you don't hear the word exclusive.
Yeah. But you want
Unless
them
they
to
earn that right.
exclusive one with a lender, though, right? You want an exclusive deal with your lender, though, right?
Yes, absolutely. No, well, hey, I was saying the last week, now buyers agents understand how we feel because we do a ton of work sometimes. You get somebody to the table and then boom, another lender swoops in and all that work is for nothing and you got to move on. So we've already felt that. You got to be on your game and you got to earn your commission. And I look at it this way, if they left, it's because I didn't do something correctly, I didn't explain something correctly, or maybe they just found a better deal. And if they did, they did.
Well, I mean, this was a great topic today. A lot of great information. I mean, is there anything else you guys want to dig into? You guys want to talk about, the unrealized capital gain tax, or do you guys want to talk about RFK supporting Trump now, or what do you guys want to dig into a little bit before we wrap things up, maybe? Or do you want to go into Bright Investor, Donato? Or is it you got it available quickly, or I don't know, whatever you guys want to do, man? Because Tyler hasn't seen Bright Investor. Tyler hasn't seen.
I have not. I just looked
yeah.
at the Instagram yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, hope you enjoyed the new social. We're we're trying to put stuff out. Yeah, I can show some stuff for a few minutes for my next engagement. Check some things out here. Go ahead and try something. You guys can see that?
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
So like what I'm doing right now is looking at people who are looking at properties in, what was it just yesterday? It was Cleveland, Ohio. And what I'm recommending folks do is, hey, if we're looking at a market like Cleveland and across the entire market, the average days on market that properties are sticking around is say 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, getting an idea of how long properties are supposed to be transacting here, in which case it's about 36 days. In fact, a lot of properties in Cleveland have been selling a lot faster. Actually, every single month for years, properties have been selling faster and faster in Cleveland. Right now, it's down to about 36 days. So
good trend line.
Yeah. So when I look in the market, I'm like, great. Well, let's find a part of town where the appreciation has been pretty solid over the past couple of years. And then what I can do is say, let's find properties that have been on the market for over a month that are in areas that are appreciating well, like zip codes, like these ones, where home prices have gone up to 150 grand a median, 212,000 the median, and I know the home prices are growing well. So I recommend people they look in those areas and then look for on-market deals that have been listed for over a month that are in their price range. So let's say single families that are on the market for over a month that meet their personal buy box, and then have someone with equity so we can get creative on the financing if it's an option. And then look for deals like these. So like this one, it's 140 grand, and it's a 3-bed, 2-bath, actually pretty recent listing. The sale comps here tell me it's only worth about maybe 71,000 based off the price per square foot in the last 83K based on the last 6 months worth of sales data. So it looks like it's overpriced just a little bit. But a 3-bed, 2-bath property in this area should rent for about $1,500 on the median, maybe $2,000 on the average. So if we were to make a full list price offer right now at knowing about $2,000 on average at 140, we factor in some insurance, call it $2,000 a year for insurance, that cash flows at today's interest rates of 6.46. So I would recommend people go look in areas where the days on market's going down and properties are being listed for longer and longer, and see where in areas where appreciation is high, so we can go in and actually start picking up properties that actually cash flow. Like this one would be a fantastic deal if you can, assuming that it's in decent condition, which we can check on. Let's see, check a Zillow listing real quick, and it looks little rough, maybe it's some repairs, but overall, it's something we can check out and say, hey, this is something we're worth offering on. So something I recommend people do is check out is find those areas where those two lines are coming down and finding properties that might make sense.
Awesome, cool stuff, man. Yeah. And what you guys got going on this weekend then coming up?
I am coaching softball, so I'll be practicing tonight and tomorrow for my daughter.
That's what you're talking about, all-star, not yourself.
No, a one-legged softball player wouldn't be very good right now, or one functional leg, I should say. No, I coach my daughter. I've coached her since she was like 10 years old, so the last few years, and I love it. That's one benefit of being injured and off the job is I've got to spend a lot more time with my kids. So
nice. Donato, what about you, man? What you more videos
Be
you're
working for a
recording?
bit. Just be working, recording some stuff and putting together some content for some events we have upcoming. So we have a bunch of different mentorship groups and coaching groups that we're looking to partner with, and property management companies. So we'll see what we can do, make something happen.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for doing this. This was a lot of good information. I think perfect timing. We decided to come up with this topic. Jackson Hole was today, so the perfect timing for the audience. And as I said, man, glad you guys are always willing to do this and try to get you guys on a more regular basis. But yeah, this was fun, man.
Sounds perfect. Thanks for having me back, man.
all right, thanks.
All right, guys.